Well, welcome to GAN TV. My name is Malik Lenzonzo. Today, another great show. We're going to be talking about the Ugandan Diaspora rally today in Washington, D.C. It's a big rally. The rally was about trying to ask America, the IMF, to stop supporting President Museveni regime because they think whatever support Mussolini is getting, it's detrimental to his own people. It's not serving the interests of the Ugandan people. So without further ado, I'm going to let you listen to one of the leaders, Mr. Tony Insubuga, who actually was the leader and probably the speaker. We're going to be listening to him, and then probably some guests from New York will join us on this, conversation, important conversation, political conversation. Let look at what was going on today downtown DC.
Stop playing deaf and dumb about the human rights violations. Now, this is where I want us to reason. On several occasions, we have had engagements with the administrators, with the directors of both the IMF and the World Bank. And friends, when we meet these people, we speak with them and we tell them exactly what we are talking about here. But on that note, I want to quote the following people. Whenever we talk about human rights in relation to IMF funds and World Bank, the administrators of these institutions would say their operation agreements and articles and clauses do not permit them to interfere with the politics of member states. IMF here has actually said their role is to fund, not to interfere with the politics of Uganda. Their role is to fund Uganda, but they are not concerned about the human rights violations in Uganda. The same thing happens with the World Bank. They've said their role is to fund development in Uganda, but they are not concerned. Actually, their articles, their operation agreements do not permit them to interfere with the politics of Uganda. And when I say politics, quote me right, when I say politics, it includes the following: the kidnaps, that is politics. Human rights violations, that is politics. The murders, that is politics. Museveni killing 45 students in Kasese, that is politics. Museveni encroaching and waging war on South Sudan, Somalia, Ethiopia, the Central African Republic, that is all politics. But how is Museveni able to pull off all these dark missions of his funded by the US government. When Museveni kills Ugandans, that is politics. But Museveni uses the money he gets from the IMF and World Bank to purchase the weapons, to purchase the tear gas, to purchase the poison from North Korea and Russia to kill Ugandans. And IMF will say, we cannot intervene because that is politics.
It is all about money. They are making money in Uganda from our gold.
What actually IMF is not telling us is they cannot interfere with Uganda's atrocities because Museveni is their puppet.
Yes.
IMF and World Bank will not interfere with Uganda's politics because they have an agreement.
Yes.
The agreement they signed between these institutions and Uganda's Museveni, it states that none of them will interfere with each other's business.
Can you imagine?
Those are the clauses that IMF and World Bank and the US government do not disclose to the public. Those clauses and articles state that IMF, World Bank, the US government will not interfere with Museveni's business if they are to work together.
Why are they giving him money?
Now that is the business. They give him money.
What business to cost?
And he exploits the resources from the region. And when Museveni kills our people, the US will go down. The IMF will say our clauses, our articles do not permit us to interfere in that politics.
Because they are busy mining our gold and oil.
That is right. Those are the clauses the IMF and World Bank does not disclose. And we are here telling you, IMF, do the right thing. Stop making dictators. Stop creating authoritarian leaders. Stop creating and empowering authoritarianism in Africa. When we talk about Museveni, Museveni is not just a Ugandan problem. Museveni is an African problem. And Americans, let me tell you this, Americans, Museveni is going to be an American problem very soon. Because Museveni is working with Russia. We all know what Russia is. We know who Putin is. Museveni is working with China. China over the years has been running their intelligence in the United States. Museveni is working with North Korea. And we all know North Korea is capable. If there is ever going to be a third world war, it is going to be between you American people and those other three people, the other three. And this is because US's influence in Africa is going to disappear.
Tell them they need to know this.
US's influence in Africa is going to be eroded. By Russia, by North Korea, by China, working with Museveni. For those of you that don't understand why the US is so, why these three superpowers are so interested in Uganda, let me tell you why. Uganda is a very landlocked country. And it is surrounded by all the main natural resource, actually the richest natural resource countries.
Yes.
We are talking about South Sudan. We are talking about Sudan. We are talking about Congo. We are talking about the Democratic Republic of Congo. We are talking about Rwanda. We are talking about Burundi. We are talking about the Central African Republic. All of these countries are rich.
Yes.
Now, some of the minerals, when we talk about minerals, the first thing all of us will start thinking about is gold. We start thinking about copper. We start thinking about diamonds. But there is a mineral called uranium that is being used. It actually is the main ingredient, raw material used in manufacturing and producing nuclear weapons. And that mineral is in Uganda and Congo. Now, if Russia is already attacking Ukraine, China is also at war with Taiwan and other neighbors. North Korea is a problem, and they are working with the dictator Museveni. Imagine where is America's superiority in the next 5 years? Because we already have nuclear warheads in Uganda. They are being manufactured in Uganda by North Korea. And the US is playing deaf. The US is playing deaf about these nuclear warheads. There is a whole plant of nuclear weapons in Nakasongola. America is playing deaf. But just imagine what would come out of all this silence. It's high time, Americans, you stand with Ugandans. It's high time, American people, you hold your senators accountable about America's foreign policies. The reason we are all here is because of the edge American foreign policies on Africa. We need to hold our representatives and our senators accountable. Fellow Americans, there is a resolution 543 that was introduced by Senator Bob Menendez. We are asking you, let us press the senators and representatives to vote on this resolution. Everything we are talking about here, the American foreign policy, it is under that resolution. Yes. And we are also requesting our senators and representatives, please make sure that this resolution passes. Yes. Senator Robert Menendez, please reintroduce the resolution. We understand there was a lot going on in the US, but please get the resolution running once again. We are willing to contact the senators and the representatives to vote on this resolution. And to the IMF and World Bank, please stop funding. Stop funding the dictator. Please, you're funding another Al-Shabaab. Oh, Americans, if you really thought that Osama bin Laden was worse, if you thought that Saddam Hussein was bad, Museveni is worst. Museveni is worst.
All right. So that was the entire speech. I'm enjoying here. If you just joined this program here, I was saying that my dear brother Joseph Senyonjo is actually joining me from New York City. And listen, you heard the brother Tony speaking, and first of all, your assessment, because I know you were not here today, but previously we have this same rally, same location where you were one of the speaker as well. Now listen to your brother, brother Tony. Tonight, what was your first impression? Does that bring back the memory? Back, I think last year when you were here in Washington D.C.
Oh, well, it's more than bringing back a memory because we are Ugandans. We are living these experiences. We are living these atrocities. We are living a nightmare that is enabled by the World Bank, IMF, and of course the U.S. and its Western allies. So yes, it definitely did hit home. Mr. Malik? All right.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, that speech didn't change from the last time I heard him, Tony speaking, and I can even play last year's speak. It's going to be absolutely the same thing, the same words, and the main point here is stop funding Museveni. But it's a little bit confusing to me because it looks like there are some principles that the United States buy upon, democracy, human rights. Not too long ago, we've seen President Museveni completely say there's some values that he don't share with the United States. The United States believe everybody should have rights, including gay and lesbians. And he said, no, this is not something that I believe. But today's speech, Tony, the team leader today, was saying, listen, if you think you have a friend, somebody who will share your value, Museveni, President Museveni is not one of them. What is your take on that?
Before I answer, how much time do we have? Because
no. We have it's only 18 minutes past. You have I give you 30 minutes.
Oh, excellent. Great. Thank you so much. Well, first, a couple issues. IMF and World Bank, which is the first point he made, and then, of course, US policies. On the point of IMF and World Bank funding this dictatorship and saying they don't interfere in politics. In fact, at one point, the IMF in a meeting said that they're not Human Rights Watch. Basically, they're just financial people and they're just not concerned about everything else, So that is obviously unacceptable. But even on the points of development and development and funding to Uganda that is supposedly benefit the people, they fail on those counts. I actually have a statement which was released by the World Bank, resident World Bank person in Kampala, and also the World Bank, IMF office. Recently they announced a release of another $120 million, of funds to Uganda, which they do every 6 or so months. Because in 2021, the IMF approved a $1 billion extended credit facility, and supposedly because of the diaspora's pressure, saying that this regime uses the money to, as I said, and as Tony said, and as everyone says, and there is proof, the regime uses the money that the World Bank and IMF gives it to suppress Ugandans. So because of that, they said, we're going to be reviewing the progress, implementation, anti-corruption measures and all that before we release the next funds, meaning they need to be satisfied that the regime is abiding by the conditions that are set, like controlling corruption, actually implementing, using the money appropriately. But on all those counts, taking them on their own measures, which they justify, let's take away politics for a second and look at development and implementation of policies. Okay. In terms of the only measure perhaps that you could give the regime some credit for is macroeconomic stability and fiscal microeconomic stability, perhaps in terms of interest rates and all that. But in terms of fiscal policy, it's a total fail. In terms of corruption, it's a total fail. For instance, this is a statement that the IMF released. It said the executive board of the International Monetary Fund concluded fourth review of Uganda's extended facility. And then it says the program aims to support the near-term response to COVID-19 pandemic and boost more inclusive growth. Reforms focused on creating fiscal space for priority social spending, preserving debt sustainability, strengthening governance, and reducing corruption, and enhancing monetary and financial sector reforms. So, looking at this statement, clearly, in Uganda's case, the regime has not met these conditions. In terms of COVID response, the Ugandans never got support for COVID. I mean, the Ugandans many people were dying during the COVID, lockdown due to a lack of funds. And they didn't get the support that was supposedly given to help them go through this COVID crisis. Uganda had the longest lockdown of any country in the world of schools. Kids were at home for over 2 years. Many girls got impregnated, and many never returned to school. So those funds were never used for the purpose. In one public health facility, Ugandans were injected with water. So basically, then what that meant is that Ugandans then shunned the so-called vaccine. The regime got so much money for vaccines, but basically were unused. Most Ugandans didn't get vaccines, and actually the COVID, it kind of hit a little bit in Uganda at some point, but for the most part, most Ugandans were never vaccinated. So that was a fail in terms of the COVID response. Two, when it comes to corruption, Museveni is the number one. He encourages corruption. Last year, the Inspector General government tried to start a lifestyle audit of all the officials because corruption is a major problem. Museveni said, "Go slow."
So I'll let you continue your statement.
Right.
It looks like what you're trying to say here is that there've been major issues, and you mentioned COVID-19, and you mentioned education. It looks like there were no urgency on giving money to help on those sectors to help the COVID, what happened to be one of the most horrible, devastating pandemic we have globally. But it looks like there were no funding to maybe there was, but you claim to see nothing helping the people. And so as you said, if that kind of an issue, important issue, or not being taken care of, any kind of support to that regime is actually not for the people. Is that your statement?
Yes, basically that is a statement, and not only is it it's not for the people, but it's being diverted because, as I said, the president said, don't prosecute these people that are involved in corruption, because at least they're building hotels in the country. They're not taking the money abroad. So that is one. Second, Museveni many years ago actually took a sack of dollars of money, or not money, a sack of money to the youth in the countryside. Which is, you see a president of the country kind of bribing the youth with a sack of money, coming with a big sack of money. And that's another point. Now, in terms of the people that have been accused of corruption, Museveni actually never prosecutes them. One in around 2010, early 2010s or 2011, around there, Mr. Mbabazi, who was then a minister of security, was accused of getting a $100 million bribe from, I think, Tullow Oil to help them get a contract for Uganda's oil. But you know what Museveni does? There was a big outcry. It was actually in WikiLeaks. WikiLeaks exposed this information. Museveni appointed them prime minister after that scandal. And then in 20, again, early in somewhere in 2012 or 2013, there was a Global Fund scandal, which was money given by the donors to help with HIV, AIDS, and other diseases. And that money was swindled. And one of the major culprits was Jim Muhwezi, who was a minister. I forget what his position was then, but he was censored and he kind of stepped down. But Museveni, about a year or so ago, appointed him security minister. The security ministry is a ministry that gets the most, I think perhaps the largest allocation in the budget. It goes to the security ministry, and most of it is classified. One of the gentlemen on the budget committee, a MP called Uganda, recently revealed that the Ministry of Defense has or security has 3 or 7 trillion shillings, which is over maybe 400 US dollars, but most of it, over $3 trillion, is classified, meaning you can't account for, even MPs don't see where the money is going. And so there is a lot of lack of transparency. And this is what the IMF, by saying that, they're looking for transparency, lack of corruption, they're turning a blind eye. And we've been telling them this over and over again, but they turn a blind eye. Just last week, 2 days ago, the Prime Minister instructed schools and hospitals to not allow opposition leaders to go and visit the sites, because recently there have been a lot of social media campaigns exposing the rot in schools, in hospitals, lack of medicines, lack of facilities for schools. And a leader of opposition in parliament went to visit some of these areas, and the Prime Minister instructed the hospitals and the schools not to allow him to go there, and if he does go there, not to give them information. But he found schools without schools without classrooms, without desks, without and one school was in tents provided by UNICEF. So this is money that the World Bank and IMF say they give billions and billions of dollars for social services, the social sector. As I said, priority social spending, but the social spending should include education. It should include health, but the health sector and the education sector are in total mess. So basically, why is that? Because most of the money is misdirected towards suppression, and it's been documented that a lot of the money that the World Bank gave in 2020 for COVID was actually used in 2020 to suppress the opposition during the election campaign.
Wow, I mean, it's amazing. But what I don't understand is all of these rallies, and when I say all of these rallies, I kind of think about what you and your friends have been doing. The diaspora here in the United States. Do you think the people from the IMF, or I don't know about the World Bank, but the IMF and the State Department, do they really listen to this and take the voice of the people seriously, or they just have a blind eye and having some kind of double standards? Because if you talk about human rights, it have to be human right everywhere, And I don't want to misquote Martin Luther King, that was used to say, injustice, here is injustice everywhere. If you think you are acting in a very unjust way at home, listen. Or if you're a guest, then justice at home, you should be able to also understand that people abroad want the same thing that you want. So can you speak on the double standards that we've been seeing with the IMF continue to giving money to rogue states, to dictators? And this is not just Uganda. It goes in Central Africa. You see leaders that don't actually serve the people, but continue to receive lots of money, and that they use to suppress their own people. Can you speak over the double standard that's going on with, especially with the United States?
Thank you so much. And actually, that ties into U.S. foreign policy, which Tony again spoke about, because the U.S. is actually the major funder for the IMF and World Bank. So the IMF and World Bank are basically extension of the U.S. So extension of U.S. foreign policy, yes. So yes, the double standards are really kept bothering Africans and all people that love democracy and human rights. One, President Biden, first of all, when he came in, he said he was going to put democracy and human rights as center of foreign policy. But beyond platitudes and words of concern and very limited sanctions like travel restriction on some unknown individuals, we've not really seen that. In fact, things have gotten worse since Biden came to power. So, things have actually gotten worse in Uganda. The people, the elections were rigged. After the election in 2021, just before Biden took office, the regime embarked on a campaign of terror, abducting, terrorizing, and torturing citizens, which actually continues to today. So we've not seen any serious action on that. And then in terms of, so how do they justify these double standards? They say interest, U.S. interests are supposedly the main cause of why they continue dealing with these dictatorships. And that's why they continue supporting Museveni, because supporting Museveni helps them with terrorism, regional security, and refugees. But again, in each of these cases, Museveni is very much part of the problem. In terms of regional security and terrorism, Museveni has a history, in Uganda, in northern Uganda, from about 20 years, in a pretext of fighting Joseph Kony. His regime committed horrendous atrocities, and they're documented they're narrated on first-hand accounts in a documentary titled "A Brilliant Genocide." If you Google "Brilliant Genocide," you will see what Museveni's regime did. And it's not only people that were victims, but also even army generals of Museveni's army were in that documentary, talking about some of the atrocities that the regime carried out. So this is not just hearsay. Then in 2016, the regime carried out a terrible massacre in the Kasese region of Uganda, where over 100 people, including at least 15 children, were killed, supposedly because they basically were contested regime's attempt to divide the region, because it is a multi-ethnic region, and the regime is adept at divide and rule. So sometimes it exploits ethnic differences, and so people resisted that, and Museveni unleashed his army and killed so many people in 2016, and took their king and over 218 of his subjects to Kampala, drove them 7 hours away, and put them in prison and charged them with terrorism. Just last week or thereabout, they released them after the state lost interest. These are people charged with terrorism, and they were released after they lost, supposedly lost interest in the case. And now going to Rwanda. In 1990, Uganda invaded. Uganda army serving Ugandan officers. Yes.
Not to cut you off, because of everybody that's watching live. I want to thank everybody from Regina to Aisha to Miss Kumba, to Williams, everybody. But this comments here made by Tony was saying, was stated Joseph's a brilliant genocide, and with that comment, I wanted to add the fact that since we are talking about double standards, when we see ruthless leaders killing his own people, that's also terrorism, right? Exactly. So if you give the same person the money to stop some kind of a terrorism, not knowing that this person will use the same resources to terrorize his own people. So it is a very tricky situation, but tricky because I don't even know if the United States knows that, or maybe they know and don't care. What is your statement about what's going on?
Again, they know because they know Museveni, because these are documented. They've been documented both by even the U.S. own State Department, by Human Rights Watch, by many organizations. But again, that so-called interests trump everything. Again, going back to regional security, Uganda Army serving officers Fred Rugema and Paul Kagame invaded Rwanda in 1990, culminating in them shooting down a plane carrying the president of Rwanda, which then set off the genocide in Rwanda. And that genocide in Rwanda actually or whatever events in Rwanda kind of then affected the Congo, and Uganda and Rwanda invaded the Congo, whereby over 6 million Congolese have died, and Uganda and Congo have Uganda and Rwanda have plundered the Congo mineral resources. Uganda exports, despite Uganda's supposedly $1 trillion deposit of gold, which are not yet exploited. Uganda's gold right now, Uganda is gold is one of the major exports to Uganda, but all that gold comes from the Congo. So Uganda is partnering the Congo. And then when it comes to, and the Congo took Uganda to the International Court of Justice for its atrocities and the plan of resources. And in fact, the International Court of Justice ruled for the Congo, said Uganda should compensate the DRC for 325 million, even though they sought 13 billion. But somehow, there was a lot of negotiations, and it was, came down to 325. And then when it comes to Somalia, this is one of the main areas where the U.S., Uganda is fighting Al-Shabaab and whatever. But in around 2011, Ugandan army were selling arms to Al-Shabaab. And supposedly, Uganda is supposed to be fighting Al-Shabaab, but they're giving them arms. This was documented, and it was a big scandal, and it was covered up by the UN, but actually it was reported by the UN. And then just about a week or so ago, Al-Shabaab attacked a camp and killed, May 26th, actually. They killed, they said they killed over 137 Ugandan soldiers, ATMIS, which is the success of AMISOM. And so after a whole week, Museveni comes up and says, 54 Ugandan soldiers were killed. Look at the disparity between 137 and 54. And not only that, most of these people, soldiers, we don't know their names. Literally, they were not honored. They were not honored for their service. The bodies were repatriated, but there was not a fitting burial or ceremony to acknowledge their service. Not only that, these soldiers are not paid. It's been documented. They go for years or months without, actually a year or two, in cases they're not getting paid. The money is coming from the European Union, and before that from the U.S. U.S. Defense Department for the operation in Somalia. But these guys are not being paid. So what does that mean? The commanders and regime pockets the money, and they're being killed. And the Shabab says they're killing more than what is reported. They're killing them all the time. So basically, the regime likes to perpetuate this instability and then gets rewarded for it. And then when it comes to refugees, which is another reason why the U.S. Says, Uganda is such a great host of refugees. Museveni creates the refugees that come to Uganda, and then it gets rewarded for it. And actually, recently, the regime, because the money has slowed down, regime said, if you don't give us money, we're going to stop. We're going to send these refugees back. Basically, so which kind of prove that really the refugees are a money machine for them. But basically, the conflicts in the Congo, the conflict in South Sudan, Museveni is actually arming proxy forces in the DRC. M23 is actually funded by Museveni and Kagame, but the other proxy forces that are causing havoc, and those people then stream into Uganda. In the South Sudan, Museveni is funding several factions, and then people come into Uganda. Most of the refugees in Uganda are from those two countries. And then about, I think last year, the Sudanese government of Salva Kiir accused Uganda of hosting rebels in refugee camps. So basically, it's a terrible game that this guy plays. The instability enables them to continue getting funding and the refugees and all that, but it's a very major cause of all these incidents. And the U.S. is saying, when they talk about the interest, what interest when the guy that you are saying that is a guardian of interest is actually the cause of all the chaos and instability and the terrorism.
I wanted to make Joseph. I wanted me to make this comment. Read this comment from Regina, very quick, and then we're gonna take a quick break. And when we come back, because this is very important, this support to Uganda, Museveni regime actually have a lot of implication. You see the what's going on in the Congo, what's going on in other countries surrounding Uganda. So this is a major major political issue that all Africans have to be seriously taking this issue seriously, because but let me read what Regina says. A correction: Ugandans are not Museveni people, because he is not one of us. He is a refugee from Rwanda who came with his mom and a very tender age. That's why he's terrorizing us. Okay, so that is something that you probably wanted to comment on, but we're gonna take a quick break. It's very important because it looks like a lot of these issues in Uganda also is similar to what going on in neighboring countries. So we're gonna take a quick break when we come. Again, let me remind you that you are on Talk to Me. It's again TV politics here, and we are with Mr. Joseph. He's a coordinator and talking to us from New York City. So Joseph, we're gonna take, like I said, we're gonna take a quick break. This is very important. When we come back, I would like for you to really speak on these issues and trying to go back in how what's going on in Uganda affecting what's going on in the Congo. That's a big piece that need to be addressed. And I remind you that this is Mr. Joseph Sanyojo is actually the coordinator of Ugandan Diaspora here in New York, New Jersey, for democracy and human rights. And we want to thank you again for being here with us and to give us the insight, because most people see the protest, but they don't usually understand what's going on when we're having this protest downtown DC. So let's take this quick break, and then we'll come back and give us more insight on this conflict in Uganda and around neighboring countries. That will be in the minutes to come. All right, let's welcome back to again politics. This is Talk to Me with Malik Lenzonzo from Washington D.C. I'm being joining here from New York with my friend Joseph Sianjo, which happened to be the coordinator of Ugandan Diaspora, for in New York and New Jersey, and also actually the coordinator for human rights when it comes to the same political issues. Right. So, my friend, before we took this break, I was trying to emphasize, and I wanted to speak a little bit more so people can understand that the the crisis, most of this crisis that we have around the region are actually tied. There's a link to it. If we see what's going on in the Congo, if you look deeper, you will see some relationship with Uganda. If you see what's going on in Sudan, so if we think when Ugandan are talking about some of this issue, this is just a separate case. You actually making a big mistake. Is that what you're trying to tell the American people and the African diaspora as a whole? Is that assessment is correct?
Oh, definitely. It's not just like a supposition. I mean, this is the reality. The UN has wrote a report recently about Uganda's role in the Congo, and actually they accused Uganda of supporting M23. Rwanda is well known is very bold about its support of M23, and Uganda is also supporting M23. So this is not just hearsay. This is the reality. And the Congo is perhaps the most important country in Africa. It's centrally located. It has over 100 million people. Is mineral resources, perhaps probably the most well-endowed country in Africa in terms of mineral resources. But unfortunately, it's mired in this endless civil wars, and of course the West has a history with the DRC, and they've been using agents. One, Mobutu then kind of became they got rid of him, and then now they have Museveni mostly, and Kagame as an appendage. But Kagame is actually Museveni's child. As you heard, Kagame was serving under Museveni's army before he took over. So they're more or less the same people. So the conflict in the Congo, most of the mineral resources that are used for the batteries, electric batteries, and a lot of the cell phones come from the Congo. So Museveni is enabling a lot of these resources to be stolen, because there is no real rule of law in the eastern part of the country where these conflicts are taking place. So Museveni and his army and associates are enriching themselves, and the companies, briefcase companies that are exploiting the Congo. Just last year, the U.S. State Department sanctioned gold from Uganda. I think there was a Belgian company that is exploiting gold in Uganda. They said this was conflict gold. Just like blood diamonds, you have blood gold in the Congo. Wow. And Uganda is the main, in fact, they have a refinery where this gold is refined and then exported. And as I said, gold is perhaps either the largest or second largest export of Uganda. But Uganda doesn't produce such gold, even though last year they said, Uganda found a $1 trillion deposit. That was actually proved to be it was just to actually try to counter those sanctions that the U.S. State Department had put on Ugandan gold, because it's actually not Ugandan gold, it was Congolese gold. So yes, Museveni is an agent of what we call neo-colonialism, and is allowing interests of Chinese, American, all kind of interests to exploit African resources, leaving our people impoverished, and causing a lot of terror and misery for the people. So yes, it's in the interest of all Africans to make sure that dictators like Museveni, principally because Museveni is the godfather of all dictators right now in the Central and East African region. Literally. I mean, I know we have Paul Biya in Cameroon and whatever, who's been there for a long time, but Museveni is the main agent of the U.S. and foreign capital in the region, which is exploiting and causing a lot of misery in the region.
Right. So when I was listening to Tony talking, and we have a chance to listen to his speech, he was saying that if the United States is not wise enough, to think that this can become an American problem, if they think, okay, let's help this dictator for now, this soon is going to become become American problem, and then he was talking about the fact that Museveni is having some relationship with a lot of leaders that America don't like. America don't get along with China, and China is doing business with Museveni, and they don't like Russia. and Russia is doing business with. They don't like terrorism, but it looks like some cases, as you mentioned, it was actually giving weapon to some groups. So this is something that people have to say, hey, interest is fine, but in the long run, how this kind of a support can affect not only the poor people, the vulnerable people of Uganda, but the entire region, and then chicken can back to roosters. There's a chance that this, problem will come back to us in the United States, and us to in the United States. We've seen that, kind of cases in Iraq with Saddam Hussein. First, he was a friend, and then, friend, when you give too much power to a friend and unchecked power, and there's always a chance that the person is corrupt with this so much power and start to do whatever you want to do. So, should America really pay attention? I know Africans have to really see this issue as their own and trying to help the people. If they don't see that, then it's just a matter of time. This issue will end up in their own countries, but also America, who has the power, the economic power, with the IMF or whatever institution of financial institution or controlled by the United States, they have the power to do something. So, and Tony was saying, if you don't, then it's just a matter of time. This issue will become your own issue. Is that a correct assessment, Mr. Joseph?
Yes, very much so. In fact, I think the problem is already here. I mean, as you know, China is okay. When it comes, the U.S. Says they value human rights and democracy, and they want them at the center of foreign policy. But when they support dictators like Museveni, Muhammad Debi in Chad, and Paul Biya in Cameroon and others, there is no difference between the U.S. and China and Russia when it comes to human rights, as far as Africans are concerned, because they're sustaining the people that are killing them as, like dictators. So, supposedly, I guess human rights and democracy are fine at home, but not fine they're not like priorities in countries where the U.S. Is dealing with these dictators. So then what's the difference between the U.S. and China? So then you might as well deal with China, which is giving you a lot more money, is willing to not ask, and Russia. And, Russia has this Wagner group, Prozygin, which is fighting in Ukraine, is causing a lot of havoc, is in Chad and Mali and other places, and they're trying to expand their influence. And so if there is no difference between the U.S. and Russia and China, then, of course, if China has more money and is willing to spend a lot more money, then China's going to get a red carpet. And then China, of course, is the main biggest competitor to the U.S. in terms of economic power, and they're already getting a foothold into the Congo, getting the resources, because there are people like Museveni that are playing, like conmen that are playing both sides, and China's going to gain the upper hand because they don't care about human rights, they don't care about corruption. They're going to, whereas the U.S. has certain laws and rules that govern how corporations deal with corruption. Like you can be charged for corruption if you're a U.S. company and you're proved to be corrupt in corrupting other countries. China doesn't have those kind of restrictions. So yes, this can be a big problem to the U.S. And finally, this is very important. Mr. Tony talked about human rights and, of course, the LGBTQ law, which Museveni recently passed. And there was a big outcry in the West. Oh my God! First of all, this is not the first time Museveni has signed something similar. In 2014, he signed what was called the Kill the Gays Bill, and there was a big outcry. And then he kind of used one of his colleagues to go through the court, and he signed it, but then it was struck down by the courts. But the courts, it controls the courts. Whatever happens in the court. In fact, this one is also in the courts. So I would not be surprised if it's struck down. But basically, if the U.S. and Europe and other countries did listen to our cries for human rights, this law would not have happened. So this is a result of them turning a blind eye for cries for democracy and human rights. They have the State Department rights reports about human rights abuses year in and year out. They're documented, and they say, oh, interest. Well, their interests produce this anti-gay law. And so it's not, as I think Tony was alluding to, gay rights are part of the overall picture of human rights. So the U.S. neglecting that, and finally, this point, remember we had Donald Trump previously clearly admiring dictators like Kim in North Korea and other places. So by allowing dictatorship and human rights abuses to go unchecked, it actually can impact you at home. So it's very, very important to not say, well, that happens far away. You're gonna get people like Trump, like Hitler. They admire each other and learn from each other. Hey, if that little guy can do it in Uganda, why can't I? I'm a big power. I have all the resources and money, so I can do whatever. So we are so interconnected, especially in this world of the internet and CNN and all that. Everyone sees this on the screens. So it's very, very important for Americans to take interest and to hold the Biden administration to its pledge to put human rights and democracy at the center of U.S. foreign policy. It's very important for Africans. It's very important to the U.S. and it's important for humanity as a whole.
Absolutely. Listen, that was a great conversation with my friend here, Joseph. We want to thank you again, Joseph, for coming. It's always a pleasure to have this conversation with you and to give us insight. I mean, a lot of people, especially I see my friend there, Miss Kumba, was from Ohio, was saying that she was happy to have this opportunity to learn more, and then she happened to be African herself, to learn more, because most of the time we think those issues are far away because we don't have venues to have a chance to explain clearly to the people so that people can understand more. And the more we understand, I think the more sensitive people become in terms of their support. So with that, we want to thank you again, Joseph. It's always a pleasure to see you. I want to, like I said, say thank you for everybody that participating, giving their support to Gen TV and the comments that they said. I want to talk about my friend Ethel. That was there when we were protesting. Shout out to also Jessica. Salome, Miss Kumba from Ohio, Regina, Antonia, obviously. My brother Tommy was doing a great job. And the deal with you and Tony is always great. Today with you and not here, but it kind of ended the situation quite good. We also have Brenda, that was also watching. We have Massey that was watching as well. We want to thank everybody, including those people that I didn't mention. We are out of time. I think we have enough time with my friend Joseph here to say everything that we wanted to say. I'm going to give you the last minute to probably give us some kind of wrap it up, some kind of conclusion about everything that, what was going on from the rally, and to what would you say, if there is a takeaway, if it's something that you want people to really keep when we finish this program, what will be that conclusion that you can give us?
All right, thank you so much, sir. So I would say that the human rights, democracy, and the fate of all of us are interconnected in this age of the internet and CNN. So it's very important for us not to isolate Africa and say, well, that does not concern us. We don't want double standards. We want the U.S. to apply the same standards that applies to Ukraine. And previously in Bosnia, when there was a war and human rights were a major issue, the U.S. and Europe intervened to stop the human rights abuses that were happening there. Africans deserve the same thing. When the genocide in Rwanda was happening, apparently the French and other Western and UN troops turned a blind eye. And then they said, we did not know, but they were there. So we want a stop to these double standards because humanity, we all share the same humanity, and what affects me affects you. And with that, I want to thank, as you said, Tony, Gina, Ethel, the boss. I don't know if you're aware, a lot of the people that came traveled from Boston, which is, that is a lot of a lot of travel, and by road, 7-8 hours of travel. So that is dedication. That is tells you how committed, how pained we are with the situation. And we ask the US government to stop turning a blind eye, to actually sanction. The big thing, we want clear and strong sanctions. We don't want just travel restrictions. As Tony said, we want that resolution that Senator Menendez had introduced in previous Congress to be reintroduced with very severe, magnificent sanctions. The U.S. sanctioned Idi Amin when, like for his human rights reasons, and maybe about a year or so later, he fell. They had a trade embargo on Uganda. They had all types of sanctions on Uganda, and Mr. Idi Amin fell. You want similar situations. I know they talk about suffering of Ugandans, but we're already suffering. The money they give is not going to support us. It's actually being used to kill us. So we need that money to be cut off, and then we can take care of the situation ourselves. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. That was great. Again, thank you again, my brother Joseph. You don't have to only wait to talk about Uganda to come on the show. You're always welcome to come to give your insight, your analysis on Gen TV. We are the TV of the future, so you have to be here to shape that future for our people here in the United States and abroad. Again, thank you again, and I look forward to speak with you another time, my friend.
Thank you so much, sir. Appreciate it.
Okay. All right. So that concludes our program for today. You can see on the screen if you have any events, that need to be covered in our community. Just remember, again, TV actually the future. You got to be here. If you have any event you want to be covered, you need some media attention. If you want to talk about issues, whether political or business or even education, Gen TV is the place in the 21st century in America. You better come on Gen TV. So we appreciate your help. Please make sure that if you any donation you're gonna give to Gen TV to help us continue to give you awesome and well round programs. Make sure that you support us. You can see our cash app below here, $ Gen TV Plus. Make a donation so that we can continue to bring people. My friend Joseph from New York, and a lot of people that want to really say something to help not only our people here but the people around the world. So that concludes our show for today. I want to thank all the viewers, all people that was connected. I mentioned some names. If I forget you, that was not intentional. We want your help, and we will continue to need your help as we continue to push forward for a more, a special, a more just, humanity, like said Joseph. And more humanity. So thank you, Tony. You did a great job. Thank you, Anne. And so I'm looking forward. Please have some time to come and chat with us here on Gen TV. It's always you're always welcome. Okay, guys, I'm done. So we are looking forward to speak with you another time. That was Malik on Talk to Me from Washington, D.C. Bye now.